Have you read your chapter about phonetics? Yes? Have you read the chapter about phonetics?
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Professor,
Hmm? Yes, please. Who is speaking?
Muad.
Yes, what is your problem?
We did. We did. First subject.
I cannot hear you.
I
What is
said,
your problem?
Professor, we did.
Ah, okay.
I said we did.
Okay, no problem. Last week we saw definition. We discussed definition about phonetics, phonology, and syntax, morphology, etc. Now, and we relate sounds to human beings, not to animals, and we gave certain evidence from external evidence from language acquisition, from schools of linguistics in which we have generativist approach, and from Charles Hawkes in which he provided us with certain features, 16 features that distinguish human beings and animals. And and we discussed also that phonology is made up of three basic elements in order to study study certain sound within a particular word. That is, you have the sound sequences and the processes in which the sounds. We will see the sounds in terms of phonemics, and then the sequences that create certain processes. We will see it in morphophonemics. I will explain this later on. Now, what we have, speech sound consists basically, human beings' speech sound is made up of noise. Turn off your mic, please. Made up of noise, which means what you produce is just noise, and noise is considered as sound, like these are just these, that is, these are noise, and this, that is the noise that you produce, it bump into the air. What do we mean by bump into the air? Because the air is made up of particles or molecules. If we are in a laboratory, you can see that the air is made up of small molecules, and those molecules, when start bumping by the sound that you produce, the noise that you produce, you come up with creating certain vibration. That's why we have space sound consists basically of noise produced by vibrating the air molecules again around the speaker's mouth. That is, those sounds that you produce are kind of noise, and this goes to near your mouth, the region of speaker's mouth, and then because air is elastic, that is, the air is known for its elasticity, and then you have, and is made up of certain molecules, small molecules, which means particles. And when this sounds, that the noise is made up of the air bump into each other, those molecules bump each, creating certain vibration. What gets in your ear when you hear someone speak is a continuous string of speech sound. That is, human speech sound is known for its continuity. That is, when I start speaking, there is a continuity of speech. One sound is, that's why we have sequence of sound. That's why sound, that is, any phonology deals with segments, sequence, and processes. That sequence that you produce, you create certain leads to create the creation of certain processes. For example, I give you an example. Last week, I gave you an example of I saw it. Look at this one. This one is a sentence. I saw it. Why it is a sentence? Because it has a full meaning. That's why we have it has a full meaning. That is, you said, I saw it. I saw it. Why it is I saw? Look at this one. I saw it. I saw it. But you have I saw it. You have the sound here. You have the verb see, and the verb see is in the past and it ends in a vowel. And the following word, which means the following morpheme, is opened by a vowel, which is e. And you have the two juxtaposed element, two adjacent element. We have in that is two vowels. Therefore, they break the cluster of two vowels by inserting not any kind of sound, but the sound that is closer to those vowels. What is the sound? What are the sounds that are closer to the vowel? That is, it resembles, it shares certain features with the vowel. And that is, when I chose the vowel, that is, you have I saw it, which means the r sound, it resembles to the vowel because it is voiced consonant. Vowels are voiced, therefore I chose the r. Therefore I said I saw it, which means here the process that is juxtaposed sounds, which are vowels, that is to break the cluster of two elements having the same. It does not facilitate the task for us to articulate, but since that is you have speech is continuous, therefore we come up with what we call I saw it. In that case, the process, look at this one, the segment and the sequence. The sequence is two juxtaposed elements, which means vowels, and to avoid this juxtaposition, which means adjacent agency, therefore I come up with insertion, a process. I insert a consonant which resembles, which shares, in other words, which shares certain features with the vowel. What kind of consonant is the consonant which is r? Why r? Because r is a vowel, and also r is a vowel, as well as r is a voice, as well as vowels are voiced. Therefore, the process here is that we have is insertion or epenthesis. Is that clear? That's why speech is continuous. But continuous, yes, is continuous, physically speaking. But psychologically speaking, which means in terms of perception, what you have in mind is discontinuous. Why it is discontinuous? Because if I say, for example, girl, how many sound in a girl? You say g, and l. Girl. You have three sound, and we have here the process girl. That is, you have in the written form is J, I, R, but that R and as well as L are liquid, the same, that is, are liquids. But that R, if it is immediately followed by L, the vowel becomes long and the R is dropped, like in a girl, like in a bird, like in a, for example, fur, etc. That is, if you have a R immediately preceded by a vowel, the vowel is lengthened and r is dropped. Is that clear? Short, tall, fur, girl, bird, which means the r is dropped and it's replaced by long vowel. The process here is lengthening. Similar to Arabic, if you have in Arabic, if you have a glottal stop, like bi'r, fa'r, fa's. If moving from classical Arabic to Moroccan Arabic, the glottal stop is the first rule apply first, because we need ordering of the rule. The first stop, that is the first rule, the application of the first rule. Rule 1, it says that you have to delete a glottal stop in this position. The second stop, that glottal stop which has been deleted, is replaced by lengthening of the vowel. Bi'r, bir, fa'ar, far, fas, fas. This is if you have a glottal stop in Moroccan, in classical Arabic. It changes to lengthening. You delete the glottal stop and you lengthen the vowel. This is what we call the processes. That is, you have a segment, and the sequence segment, the sound on its own, it doesn't mean anything, but you have your mic, please, your mic, someone, turn off your mics. You have a segment which is a sound, and you have the process of that is the sequence of the sound together that are put together. They create a certain. That is the sequence of something, creates certain processes, and those processes that is either lengthening, deletion, epenthesis, insertion, what else? Shortening, assimilation, and so on. So there are many. Is that, and this one, what is it? Why do we have these processes? These processes are created because of the continuity of speech. The continuity of speech, like for example, what's your name? What's your name? That is what is your name? But the s becomes a sh, because it is juxtaposed to sh, which is to ye, which is palatal. That's why that ye has affected the s. The s, which is alveolar, becomes palatal in the vicinity of a palatal sound. Therefore, we have a ye is a palatal because of the continuity of speech, and speech is connected because we cannot say where we can stop and we can add where it can end. Therefore, we have a certain processes that are created. Either the processes, which means what would we call processes? Phonological processes, rules that account for this change. Is that clear? We'll move on. Here we have put in other words, whenever a sound is produced, the organ, that is, look at this one. This is because while producing specific sound, your speech organ, for example, while this explains that sometimes when we produce a sound, that is, our organ of speech anticipates before producing the sound. For example, I'll show you this. Anticipate, for example, look at this one. If I want to use swim, that is the anticipation of rounding the lips before the production of the sound. Look at this one. Swim. In other words, because this one is done via the generative approach. The generative approach, which means that is, give signal to your mind that I'm aware of the second sound, the production of the second sound, therefore I need, my lips must be rounded in order to produce. That's why you have a certain link between what you have, mental ability, cognitive ability, الإدراك المعرفي, that is what you have in mind, which is mental ability. That is, we are dealing with the generativist approach, because the structural approach they don't give much importance to the mind, which means what the objective study is the surface structure. They believe that the existence of the abstract level in certain area, they exist, but our objective, their object of study is the surface structure. That's why, for example, I said last time for B.F. Skinner, they say B.F. Skinner is considered as a neo-behaviorist. Neo-behaviorist, which means he's neither pure behaviorist nor pure generativist, nor pure generativist, because he said that he came up with his theory that he said operant conditioning. That is, the operant is conditioned. What does it mean? The stimulus is conditioned, though it is not present. It is learned, though it is present, which means you believe in the absence of thing, which means in the abstract level. Therefore, he feels that his theory is not adequate enough to solve all the problems that exist in language. That's why we have this is an example of the generative approach generative approach which believes in the existence of two levels, the abstract level and the surface level. And to relate between the two levels, we need what we call certain rules. Those rules are called transformational rules. But the rules cannot be done haphazardly, but they must be ordered, because the sentence that you find, the segments that, or the word that you find at the surface level, through from the origin, the hidden, that is the abstract level, is you move from the abstract level to the surface level via the transformation. What do we mean by transformation? Which means transformation about the rule. For example, I give an example of the word impossible. Impossible, it is pronounced impossible. That im does not exist as a prefix in English, but the underlying representation, and we don't have im as a prefix, is in English. Therefore, the abstract level of the prefix is in plus possible and word boundary. This is the word boundary. I will represent this when we arrive to structure. I will provide it with slides. That is, you have in, that is in, and we don't have im. You don't have as a prefix im, in, and then you have morpheme boundary, which is indicated by plus, and the root, which is possible. Therefore, but that is created because of the p, which is bilabial. In that case, the process here, that is assimilate certain feature of a p. It's what kind of feature? The feature of articulation. What kind of articulation? Which is place of articulation. Therefore, it is that a p has affected the n, which becomes, that is a m. Therefore, it is backward and it is adjacent, one after the other. Therefore, the process is regressive contiguous assimilation. There are some assimilation that is not assimilation but dissimilation. We will see some assimilation, dissimilation, contiguous, non-contiguous. Contiguous, which means one juxtapose the other. Non-contiguous, separated. We will see it later on. Is that clear? And this one is done through what? Through what we call the continuity of speech, which means speech creates because speech is connected. That's why you delete, you add, you insert, you drop, you lengthen, you shorten, etc., to facilitate the task for the production, for the articulation, for speech. That's why you cannot say where this one is begin and where this one ends. And this one, what we call sorry. And where does this segment, that is the message, end or start? That's why we have this continuity of speech. Let's move on. Here you have the continuity of speech. We can divide it into two. You have something which is physical and something which is psychological. Psychologically speaking, that is your perception, how you perceive the word, how you perceive the sound. That is the word. In that case, the perception is psychologically, it is discrete. You can divide the word into entities, psychologically speaking, because the perception, what you have in mind, you have your pre-knowledge about things. That is, for example, if I say dog, how many sounds do we have in dog? You say 3 sounds. You have the, you have O, and you have a G. But physically, you cannot discrete this sound because physically the sound because it is continuous. Speech sound is continuous, but psychologically speaking is discontinuous. Is discontinuous because you can deconstruct the sound, that is the word, into separate units, separate entities, separate segments. Which means, what do we mean by physical? It's acoustic. Acoustic, which means it is derived, it is affected by the air, the molecule that you have in the air. And here you have, that is, phonetics has 3 parameters. You have acoustic phonetics, auditory phonetics, and articulatory phonetics. Our meal is articulatory phonetics, but acoustic phonetics and auditory phonetics, as well as the articulatory phonetics, we need 2 persons, 2 people, that is to interact, to have a certain message. What am I doing here? For example, I'm providing you with a certain message. That is, I'm providing you a certain message. That is, we are 2 persons, we are 2 people. I am the people, I am the speaker, you are the listener. Speaker, listener. The encoder, you are decoder. You decode. You deconstruct the message. And I am the sender, you are the receiver. But, for example, both of us, sorry? Samira, what do you want? Samira, turn off your mic. That is, you have 2 persons, that is a message. That is a message, that is, I need my vocal tract. That is vocal tract, you have your lips, your mouth, your tongue, your saliva, your upper teeth, your lower teeth, and also your mind. Your mind is there. Because here listening and speaking are active. Listening is active. Though you are listening to me, you are active. But hearing is a passive, is involuntary. But speaking or listening is voluntary. Is that clear? Because your mind is active. Marwan, what you are doing, the shape of your eyes, that is, it means that I'm storing my message. This one. That is, you say what you are doing. This one you put, that is, you push this one to backward. That is, you give it hint to your mind. That is, I get, understand, or yes, I got the message from your eyes. From facial gesture is called also a kind of language. That is, yes, what you are doing, Safa. That is this one. I'm listening. I'm interested in what you are saying. This is the way. Similarly to Saeeda Saddiq. That is, I'm following you, continue. Yes, I get the point. Go ahead. Is that clear? This one, it shows that you are interested, which means you are listening, which means you are active. You are storing the message. And therefore, we are 2 persons. That is, I'm the speaker and you are the listener. I'm the encoder, you are decoder. I am the sender, you are the receiver. Therefore, that is mind as well as my vocal tract, because there is close relationship. The modules of the mind and the vocal tract are closely related, because I give transmission to the module that I have in mind to produce certain language, and you will find that you did it in psycholinguistic, and therefore I transmit the message, and the message goes through the air. And the air, sometimes you have noise, sometimes you have something else, but you don't get the exact sound while you receive it, and you receive it in your auditory articulation. Your auditory articulation, what do you mean by auditory articulation? That is your auditory channel, which means you have the ear, in which you have the outer ear, the middle ear, the inner ear, the nerves, and you have the cortex. The cortex is the finest element in which it is considered as sift. You sift, غربل. You sift the message and you take only the key element of it. Once you sift, you take the key element of it. What you have grasped according to your intelligence, according to your understanding. If I ask you a question, you come up for example, what do we mean by, for example, auditory channel? You will give different definition for this. Why? Because of your understanding, your pre-linguistic knowledge, that is knowledge that you know before, and your understanding. Therefore, you come up with this and you give it to me as a package. And I say, for example, I come up with did I say this? I didn't mention this. It is your interpretation, it's not mine. Is that clear? That is the learning that you have. The knowledge that you have is a package, is related to what you know before. That's why I said you did it with Professor Bouyahi. That is, I will not repeat things, but I will repeat something that is new, relate to what you have already seen. Is that clear? And then that's why the listener must be within earshot carefully. And you listen and you get just a gist of the information, which means sometimes you understand something. I said something, but you understand differently because something with para factors, which means other factors because of the noise, because that are transmitted via the air, which means the acoustic. And the acoustic is it shapes your reception about the message that I have conveyed. Move on. Any question? Any question? Any question? Yes, Muad. Muad?
Professor,
Muad.
Professor here in yes, Professor. Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Means that in auditory phonetics, hearing is hearing got this neutral or neural signals to the auditory nerves, and perception decode this message.
What is your question, Muad?
I mean, what is the function of hearing? Is it only carry this neural signals to the auditory?
Hearing is passive. Hearing, when you someone hears, is a passive. That is the mental ability is not working. That is here. It is involuntary, in other words. Something that is, it comes to you, either you like it or you don't like it. It is involuntary. Like, for example, even in syntax, we find it in syntax. For example, there are some, for example, the verbs which are put in the progressive form, some stative and dynamic verbs. Some stative and dynamic verbs. You know what is stative verb and dynamic verbs? Stative verbs are verbs that can be put only in the simple form, where dynamic verbs are verbs that are put in the progressive form. For example, it smells nice. It smells nice. What does it mean? The smell comes to my nose, either I like it or I don't like it. It's involuntary. But when I go to the garden and I take, for example, a flower and I start smelling it, that is, I start smelling it, which means this one, I'm going to say, I'm smelling the flower, which means I did it voluntary. That's hearing, it's involuntary. But listening is voluntary. That's why hearing is a passive. Is that clear? We will see it. Is that clear, Muad?
Yes. Thanks so much, Professor.
Most welcome. Move on. Here you have, from physical point of view, some sounds are produced as continuous wave. Dabdabat, wave is dabdabat, as continuous wave. That is the dog, etc. Roots, sit and seat, sit and see it. You feel, if we are in a laboratory, you feel that they're a continuous wave resulting from continuous flow of movement in the focal tract. That continuous wave resulting from a continuous flow of movement. Like, for example, intelligent. There's a kind of movement in the vocal tract. However, those speech sounds are physically continuous. They are physically continuous, but the perception, that is perception which is related to psychology, that is psychology related to the mind, which means if you have a pre-linguistic knowledge of the English, that is of discreteness of the sound as a separate unit, we can say that is how many sound, how many segments, how many sound do we have in a word dog. You come up with as a discrete, you can divide it, you can deconstruct the word by having like the, o, g, the sounds, the, o, g, 3 sounds. And similarly, it is applicable to Arabic, kitab. How many sounds do we have in kitab? And you come up, okay? Ta, a, long vowel, and the b, four sounds. And this one, that is for phonologists, they make a differentiation between continuous sound, which is related to physics, which is purely science, and to psychology, which is purely mental. And it depends on the perception of the person. Therefore, you have, that is, what is physical is continuum. What is psychological is discontinuous, which is discontinuous, which means discontinuity of the thing, that is, you can deconstruct the word and you come up with separate segments, which means separate units. Whereas continuous, you cannot separate, it's impossible. It is not subject to separation. It is not subject to have separate units, separate entities. That's why that is for the phonologists as well as scientists, they divided the speech into what is psychological and what is physical. What is psychological? It is related to the mind and it is subject to discreteness, subject to separation, subject to deconstruction, whereas continuous, that is what is physical, it is continuous. You cannot tell when you can divide the word and when, even we cannot account for even where we can stop those sound, that message. Is that clear? Did you get the point? Yes, please. Did you get the point? No answer?
Yes, Professor.
Are you following?
Yes, Professor.
Speech is studied, human speech sound is studied along 3 parameters. What is physical, what is how it is perceived, and how it is produced. What is physical, in that case, it is acoustic and auditory and articulatory, which means articulatory, it is our meal. Acoustic is related to the air, and auditory, that is within the earshot of the receiver. Here you have auditory phonetics. Hearing is a passive process. It involves transforming air pressure changes into neural signals, which the auditory nerve carries to the brain auditory area, which means there is a link. Hearing is passive, it's not like listening. Whereas perception, which is listening, is active process because it is related to the cognitive idrak al-ma'rifi, it is related to the mental operation, is a mental operation. Whereas hearing is not a mental operation. It is done involuntary, that is, it involves transforming air. What is air related to hearing? It transforms air into neural signals, that is nerves, which that auditory, it goes from the mouth, the speakers, that is the speaker's mouth, and then it transforms the air into certain that is neural signals, and then it transforms it to the auditory channel of the brain, the beacon message, and then it transforms it to the inner ear, outer ear, middle ear, inner ear, and cortex, etc., to sift the message, to take only the most important of the message. And this one is related to the mental ability, which is perception, which is psychological, which is active, because the speaker as well as are active. Why active? Because their mind, that is, are working at the same time. Therefore, you sift, that is, and you get the point, etc., for something, and then you sift it, and then you have to understand before sifting the major elements, the most important element, to write it down as notes in order to revise it. And before sifting, you have to understand the message. This process is called perception. The perception is closely related to the cognition, المعرفة, to the cognition, in إدراك, to cognition, and the cognition which is mental, which is you have to have something at least that is of intelligence. And therefore, that is, perception is an active process. Acoustic phonetics. What is acoustic phonetics? Acoustic phonetics is deals with the air and noise. That is, it is related to vibrating particle of air creating certain noise. What happens when you produce a speech sound can be seen along the following. You push a quantity of the air in your lungs upward, which is pulmonic airstream. That is, the quantity of the air is called pulmonic airstream. Airstream, pulmonic airstream, and the word pulmonic, it comes from Latin, which means it is les poumons. And therefore, all the languages that we have in the world, except African languages, that their pulmonic airstream mechanism is come from the lungs outside, whereas African languages, it comes from outside inside. That's why phonologists distinguish phoneticians distinguish between the two. Aggressive, you have the three major airstream mechanisms. You have aggressive pulmonic airstream mechanism, aggressive pulmonic airstream mechanism, and velaric pulmonic airstream mechanism. That is English, French, Arabic, Spanish, Portuguese, etc. These languages, that is, the air comes from your lungs and you push them upward, and then the air travels from the larynx through the vocal cords and through the lips. That is, this is the process. Whereas the ingressive is the air comes from outside and inside. In other words, it's not that you exhale the air, it's you inhale the air. This is the problem of African languages. When they start speaking French or other languages, you notice it is noticeable that they've got an accent in their language because of that. That is, the air comes, that is, the inhale the air from outside inside. That's why the process that we have here of pulmonic airstream mechanism is ingressive. And you have velaric. Is that clear? What do we mean by this one? You push a quantity of the air upward through this volume of air travels from the larynx, through the vocal tracts, into the outside via the lips. Once the pulmonic air gets outside, it pushes air molecules against each other, which means I said that air is elastic and it pushes them against each other, which creates certain vibration. Then the air molecules start vibrating because air is elastic. Specifically, each molecule travels to bump, and each molecule travels to bump into another and come back to to bump each other, and then it returns to its initial position. But the number of movement that it creates as during this vibration is called oscillation, and the number per second is called the cycle, And technically speaking, it is called hertz. And this one is just done for your own information. If you read, if you are interested in phonetics and you come across these words, this is what they mean. And the vibration, that is, according to phonologists, they divided the vibration into two parameters. That is the frequency and amplitude. That is, frequency is related to rapidity, whereas amplitude to how great this vibration is. That is, how frequent. Rapidity related to frequency is rapidity, but amplitude is related to the vibration, how stronger is the vibration. That's why in terms of vowels, that is, there are certain tense vowels and lax vowels. Tense vowels, the frequency of tenses, that is the vibration of your vocal cords. And if it is high, if it is great, which means it's related to amplitude. If it is rapid, it is related to frequency. To analyze is that clear for this one? I know that it is abstract, but this is it's not our meal, but we have to deal with it. To analyze the physical acoustic property of sound, physicians use main machine, that is spectrogram. This one is this is the study of amplitude and frequency. And this one is the horizontally, that is this black, these are called formants. This is for your own knowledge. But what we want is we want to deal with articulatory phonetics. Articulatory phonetics includes three major parts, which means place of articulation, manner of articulation, and voicing. And you have to know these things by heart, because without these things, we cannot work, because they are the key, the crucial element in phonology: the place of articulation, manner of articulation, and voicing. If we want to, you have to study the sound. That is the sound. They give me the description of the sound. For example, p, b, b. For example, p, b. For example, pad, bad, and mad. What is common feature among the three sounds? The three words. That is the p, b, and m. They share one feature. They form a natural class. They're all bilabial.
Professor, they
Yes.
also stops, bilabial and stops.
Sorry? Who is speaking?
Hanan.
Hanan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I see your face?
I don't have front cameras, Professor.
You all. Me too. I don't have a camera. I'll stop it here, and then we leave and consider this class done. Is that clear? For a man, that is a pebum. She said that m is a stop. According to Sadiqi and Muhannaji, that is a peb, and
Professor, please.
yes.
I said b are stop, but m are nasal. Is nasal.
What I heard is m is a stop. Anyway, I explain. You have a pebum. That is a p is placed between two lips, m is placed between two lips, b is placed between two lips, which means here p, b, m are bilabial, because you have two lips involved. That is a p, they are called bilabial. Bi is two. Muhannaji and Sadiqi, what they come up with? They came up with the m. They consider m as a bilabial stop. M is bilabial stop. For phonologists, they say no, it's not a bilabial stop. It is bilabial, but it is not stop. Because what distinguishes stops or plosive from m? That is, it is the air. The air, that is, air is blocked. For a peb, it is blocked. That is, there is a total impediment of the air, which means total blockage of the air, but the air is released at the end. Some phonologists would call it plosives or stop. If it is called explosive because the air is blocked and it is released at the end, but it creates ba, ba. Is that clear? Ma. That is for Muhannaji, not for me. Now, if they consider it as ma, as a stop, and that is when you study stop, it is related to the air. But for ma, if we compare ma to pa and the ba, the air for ma escapes to the nasal cavity, to the nose. Whereas for plosive, it does not escape to anywhere. It is within it. There is a total blockage. It is a total obstruction of the air. That's why ma is considered as bilabial place of articulation where it is produced, and the way it is produced because of the air, that's why it escapes to the nasal cavity. That's why it is called nasal sound. And therefore, that is any sound, in any sound, it has a three description. You have place of articulation, manner of articulation, and voicing. Place of articulation, it has to do with the points where it occurs, where it's produced, where it is articulated. Manner of articulation, it has to do with the air, the way it is uttered, the way it is produced. Voicing, it has to do with vocal cords. Either the vocal cords are tightened, and if they are tightened, the glottis is closed. If the glottis is closed, the air cannot escape. Therefore, it creates certain vibration of the vocal cords. The closure of the glottis, which pushes the vocal cords start vibrating, because the vocal cords are certain two elements near the glottis. That's why they start vibrating. Another evidence which comes from, it is an external evidence which comes from language acquisition, that is language, because when you produce voice sounds, which means you need much effort to produce them. You need, that is for children, the vocal tract is not trained to produce such sound. They are not trained to produce sound. That's why they produce the easy sound. What do I mean by the easy sound? Which means the least difficult, in which you don't need much effort to produce them. Therefore, they produce the voiceless sound. Voiceless sound, when you produce voiceless sounds, even at an early stage of the language acquisition, the vocal tract is not trained to produce. They cannot articulate certain sounds which are voice sound. Therefore, they start by the front sound, which are very easy, and then the back sounds are acquired later on. Similarly to this one, that is, they start with PTK, only voiceless sound. That is, they start with PTK, and later on, on their way of acquiring they are exposing to the language. They are exposed to the language, and they start acquiring new sounds, and their vocal tract is trained to produce some sound. But at the beginning, at an early stage of language acquisition, they start acquiring just the least difficult, that is the least, they don't need much effort to produce them. Is that clear? Yes? No problem? That's why I said for Muhannaji, they say, and Muhannaji Atfor, that is, they say that they have me because of pressure of two, they are bilabial stop. It is not because you put it, but where is the air? The air escapes through the nasal cavity. That's why it is called nasal. Move on. Articulatory phonetics. We are more interested in articulatory phonetics partly because it is a basis upon which many branches of linguistics draw. That is, you have phonemics, phonology, and morphophonemics. Phonemics, that is, we will deal with phonemics as far as structured approach is concerned, with the Bloomfield, the American linguist Bloomfield procedures. procedures, because we will describe just the distribution of the sound, the distribution of the segment. That is where the segment occurs, which means here we cannot deal with the underlying representation. That is in that case, we will see what is the basic phoneme, what is the derived phoneme, and therefore we need to know about markedness, the markedness theory, markedness and frequency. That is markedness and frequency. How frequency the sound is, and is also what is markedness, less marks, more marks, etc. And then phonology, we will deal. In order to deal with phonology, the sequence, that is for structured approach, we did just with the segments, describing the segments. Whereas in phonology, we will use the sequence, but we cannot opt for the structured approach because the structured approach cannot account for all the languages. It cannot describe the language, the sequence in other languages, because we will be using Arabic, French, and English, and even hypothetical languages. And therefore, in order to study the distribution of phonemics in phonology, will you be using morphology? What is, because morphology affects phonology. For example, morphology, what is morphology? Morphology is the study of the internal structure within a particular word. Because when you add one element, morphologically speaking, to the word, it affects its pronunciation, it affects its distribution, it affects many things. In that case, I give you an example. That is, for example, if I say boys, for example, I give you an example from an adjective. As adjective, yes. From adjectives. And adjective, we have a comparative adjectives. Yes, comparative adjective. If we want to do the comparative adjective, if you have one syllable, yes, are you following? I give it from, when we start talking about morphology, we start talking about grammar, about meaning. Morphology stands for meaning. Phonology and phonetics is the lower level, which means, and I give you an example, that is the evidence, that is, though children start producing sound, it was proven that some children, though they produce sound, they were considered as deaf children. But once you reach what we call the morphological level, and you start producing, the mother will be relieved enough because her child starts speaking the language. Because that's why certain psycholinguists consider morphology as the birth of grammar. The birth of grammar, which means the child is safer. In that case, he or she will speak the language. That's why when we talk about morphology, we talk about the meaning. That is, you have meaning. If I say, for example, slim, that person is slim. And the other one, if we compare two. That is, comparative form, you add er, the suffix er. Comparative, that is slimmer than. That is slimmer, that is you add er to the root, which is slim. But the root is made up of, that is, even in orthography, that is the writing, you have to go back to phonology. That is, slim is made up of one word, one syllable. But the syllable, the vowel of the syllable is short. If the vowel of the syllable is short and you provide with the comparative form, the er, the suffix, you double the consonant. Big. Look at this one. Big is adjective. You add er. but you double the consonant because the vowel of this of the adjective, the syllable is short, bigger than, slimmer than. If you have long vowel, you cannot double the consonant. For example, I don't have a long vowel. Any adjective that in which you have one vowel and the vowel is long. Any adjective. I don't have any adjective in mind in which you have one vowel and therefore the vowel is long.
Can we say, Professor, small? Small.
Small, yes. Sweet, yes. Small. 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 You cannot say small, but small you have double L. Small. You have yes. High is different. Smart, yes, smart. Thank you, Latifa. Smart, you have smarter, smarter. That is smart. That is you don't double the t. But if you have one vowel which is small vowel, short vowel, in that case you cannot double. You double the consonant. In that case, here phonology affects the morphology. This is what we call morphophonemics. Another example, for example, boy. I will give boy, and I will put it. Boy is singular. A boy. Boy is singular, and it is countable now. And I can turn it into the plural. I will add that is se. That's on its own. It's a sound, it's a segment, but when it is attached to the root, which is boy, and boy ends in a diphthong, boy, and therefore you attach the s sound, therefore the segment which is s is attached to the root, which ends in a vowel, and the vowel and the diphthong, and the vowel diphthong is considered as one vowel that can be related via type bar. Therefore, it is voice. The following segment, it has a grammatical function which stands for plurality, it changes its pronunciation to z. Therefore, it becomes boys. Similarly to church. Look at this one. Church. Church. It ends in sh. Fricative. Sh. Palatal fricative. And then you add in the plural, that is se, which is a fricative sound. Two adjacent sounds which have in the same place of article, that is the same way of production, which means same manner of articulation. You cannot do it. It's impossible. Therefore, you have to produce an insertion, that is, insert a vowel to break the cluster of two consonants, two sounds having either the same place of articulation, the same way of articulation, or the same voicing. Therefore, we come up with churches, churches. Therefore, that's a se, which is initial se, which is a sound that is, it turns out to be to is, because that vowel, which is a voice, has affected the sound se, which is voice. Is that clear? This is what we call morphophonemics, which is morphology with phonology. And this one is very important this one we will be dealing with it in terms of abstract level and the surface level in terms of genitives approach. Is that clear? And partly because the other two branches belong more to exact science than to philosophy of language. Acoustic phonetics is directly related to physics, while auditory relates to neurology, which means you have auditory phonetics relate purely to science, and this one is to philosophy of language. Therefore, these are not our meal. Our meal is, that is this one. That is place of articulation, manner of articulation, which means articulative phonetics. We start with airstream mechanism because air is very important. And then this one is the vocal tracts. And your vocal tracts, you read it at home because you need it in the description of the sound. Here you have airstream mechanism. Time flies. Airstream mechanism. Airstream mechanism, which means related to the air. The source and direction of the air used in producing sound are crucial in the description of speech sound, which means the air is very crucial in the description of the sound. Without air, you cannot describe sound. Without air, you cannot produce sound. Air is part of the description of the sound and the production of the sound. Therefore, I said, this is what I told you before, there are three major airstream mechanisms. You have aggressive sound, ingressive sound, and velaric sound. Aggressive sound, that are all species that for human beings possess, that are from the lungs outside. This is from our lungs upward, outside from your mouth. Ingressive is you inhale, and I said it is part of the African languages. Let me read. The airstream flow of air is said to be pulmonic when the air is coming out of the lungs. Most speech sounds in human language are made with such outgoing air. English, French, and Arabic use this mechanism. The term aggressive pulmonic air mechanism, stream mechanism, used to describe this process. You describe this, well, the thing that the air is coming out of the lung, upwards the mouth, etc., which means that is from inside outside. This is what you call aggressive pulmonic airstream mechanism. Ingressive pulmonic extreme mechanism is such air is called ingressive, which means incoming. The gesture closing the glottis, lowering the larynx, etc. And this one is known for African languages. That is, some African languages use the ingressive airstream mechanism. In that case, and among aggressive, outgoing air is manipulated differently from the air is compressed in the vocal tracts by closing the, look at this one, by closing the glottis and raising the larynx. Here is closing the glottis by lowering the larynx. Is that clear? When you produce aggressive pulmonic airstream mechanism, you close the glottis and raise the larynx. But here in aggressive, you close the glottis by lower the larynx. Is that clear? Articulated, and you have another sound produced in this way, like the aggressive sound are called ejectives, and it is known in American Indian languages. And they are symbolized like inverted commas. And this one, when you say, for example, for Berber, who is Berber, in which you use yes, this is ejective. Who is Berber? Are there any Berbers in the class? Yes. When you say yes.
Yes, we use this.
Are you from Khamisat?
No, I'm from the south.
From?
From south, near Agadir.
You have which Berber is you have which Berber? Sus, yes. Which means which Tamazer. That is it's Sus. That is when you use, for example, that is yes. They use. It is produced by inverted commas, which is it is a kind of ejective. This is called ejective. Yes. Ejective, and here we have ejectives, and it is produced by we find it in American Indian languages, and it is replaced by inverted commas. Here you have another, which means you have lowering the etc. While producing sound using ingressive, a little amount is rapidly placed into the space you result in is an implosive. That is implosive. You have a plosive sound, but when you produce it, when you put inside, it's no longer plosive. The air outside is released, but the air inhale the air. It is implosive. That is, you have plosive sounds like stop sound. That is that is, the air is blocked and then it is released. But the opposite of this one, that is, you inhale the air and therefore the sound that you produce, they are not plosive, they are implosive, which means inside. That is here that is implosive, because the first sound, which is bilabial and affects the preceding sound, which is a ne, that's why it becomes implosive. It is regressive assimilation, and therefore we have implosive, that is, the air is not plosive, that is not released, it is inside, it is done inside. That's why we come up with implosive sound. And this one, it is called in ecpic. Look at this one, the best sound, which is voice in English, and in Arabic it becomes voiceless while it is, we will inhale the air. And the representation of this sound, it is used as b with curly hand, and this one is used in African language in Ekpi, and it means stone. Here you have the difference between an ejective sound and implosive sound is that while the production of requires closing the glottis and raising, this is what I said. I made the difference between ingressive and aggressive. One is closing the glottis and raising the larynx. The other one is closing. Aggressive is... Sorry? Any question? Aggressive sound is closing the glottis and raising the larynx, whereas ingressive is closing the glottis by lowering the larynx. Another stream mechanism is termed velaric. This is what I told you. It involves the following. The velum is closed and part of the tongue is placed at some points of the roof of the mouth, creating an empty space. Then the tongue is pulled and the closure is released, resulting in a click. Velaric sound, when you say no in Arabic, in Moroccan Arabic, and not all people say this way, because some families, they say it's impolite when you use, because it is replaced, because as if you were calling a dog in Moroccan culture, like this is what you call click. Are you following? Velaric sounds, that is the tip of the tongue, your turn off, Samira. You, for example, the velaric sound, when you produce say no in Arabic, because some people would say it's impolite when produce this no, because as if you were calling a dog in Moroccan culture. Did you this? No, in Moroccan Arabic. And when you call a dog in Moroccan Arabic, that's why some people consider it as impolite, as rude, when you produce this, when you answer no in that way. This is what you call velaric airstream mechanism, in which we have three kinds of airstream, pulmonic airstream mechanism. You have ingressive, you have aggressive, and you have ingressive, velaric. Aggressive, which means Moroccan Arabic, classical Arabic, French, etc. That is the air from the lungs and outside, and that is, it is the closing of the glottis and raising the larynx for aggressive, whereas ingressive is closing the glottis, lowering the larynx. And velaric airstream mechanism, you use that. And the kind of ingressive pulmonic airstream mechanism, we have a certain sound like ejectives, in which we have the kind of Berber in Morocco, in Moroccan context. And there, for example, for Vilaric, we have the clicks, the sound clicks, and these are found in African languages, and we find this in Moroccan culture, in which we have the say no in, or the no, or calling a dog. Yes, move on. Phonetic patterns. We move on to phonetic patterns. What do we mean by phonetic patterns? Which mean the system in phonetic, that is, each language has its pattern as far as phonetics is concerned, which means the sound that are produced follow certain pattern. And we have it's universal. It's universal. That is, it's universal. Why it is universal? Because in 1986, Chomsky added to his theory universal grammar, because it's very important in deciphering other languages. Why it is important? Because any language has consonants, any language has vowels. That is, wherever you can go, you can find consonant and vowel in every single language in all over the world. But the distribution, the way they are distributed, the consonant and vowel, they are distributed, differ from one language to another language. Therefore, he provided that with two in universal grammar. They say that you have two kinds of parameters. You have one, it is fixed, and the other, it is variant. Therefore, he said that the universal, you have principle and parameters. A principle is fixed through, that is, across the board. That is, all languages have vowels, all languages have consonants, all languages have verbs, all languages have nouns, all languages have parts of speech. All parts of speech, you can find it all over the world in every single language. That is, if you have verb, you can find in Arabic verb, in French verb. That is, you have verb, fi'l, and you have na'at, hal, and you have adjective, and you have the same you find every single language you have. But the distribution of these elements, this differs from one language to another language. That's why they call it parameters. Parameters are not fixed, they are open. But once the child starts learning, he starts learning, that is, acquiring the parameters of his language, and once the parameter is learned, therefore it is fixed. Therefore, we can say that the parameter is no longer considered as a parameter, but as a principle of that particular language. Is that clear? Here you have speech sound is made up of two classes. It falls into classes, depending on whether or not a restriction exerted on the outgoing extreme mechanism. That is, here we can differentiate between consonant and vowel. What is the difference between consonant and vowel? Vowels, they are open. That is free passage of air through the vocal cord, which means the mouth is open, which means why? That is, to distinguish between vowels and consonant, the freedom of the air from the mouth. Because the mouth is open, like, for example, a, e, u, etc. And whereas other consonants, sometimes it is blocked, sometimes it's free, sometimes it is partially blocked, etc. And therefore, they distinguish between, here we can say, and they distinguish, and sometimes, that is, if we distinguish between vowel and consonant, what is the link between vowel and consonant? Vowels are produced by modifying the shape of the oral cavity. The oral cavity, which means in which they distinguish between oral sound and nasal sound. Nasal sound, in which you have the air escape to the nasal cavity, whereas oral sound, they cannot escape, the air cannot escape the nasal cavity, but it has to modify, either the air is blocked or impeded, or it is free, or it is, for example, delayed, like, for example, ch and j, the air is blocked, is blocked and release at the end. That's why they are called, according to generativists, delayed release. plus delayed release like ch and j. The stop is delayed and then it is released. Why that is the air is stopped, is delayed? Because you have a ch, look at this one, a ch, that is the combination of the two sounds, t and sh. Here we have here what we call double articulation. Here we have here double articulation. You have here, you have a ch and j. The air is delayed, and then it is released. Why it is released? Delayed, because you have the stop, t is stop, total blockage of the air, but it is released at the end because of the palatal fricative, which is sh. Similarly to j, the is a stop, the air is blocked, but it is released by the production of the j, which is fricative. That's why we have two plus delayed release sound, which means plus delayed release sound. In English we have two, that is, and it is they are represented by c and then ch and g. That is this one. In that case you have this that is the air is delayed and then is released because of the fricative sound, palatal fricative sound, similarly to j. And they have a certain, this one is voiceless, this one is voice. In that case we have, that is, here we have a binary feature, and binary feature is not discussed at random, haphazardly, but it was taken from the Saussure's notion of dichotomy of the word of opposition. That's why we have here, they distinguish between vowel and consonant. Vowels, you have a freedom of the air, and whereas consonants, that is, sometimes the air is free, sometimes is free, sometimes is blocked, sometimes is goes through your jaws, sometimes is delayed, sometimes it depends. That's why we differentiate, and sometimes the air escapes to nasal cavity. Here you have differentiation difference between consonant and vowel, and the group between oral sounds and nasal sounds. Is that clear? Whereas a consonant is produced when the air is stopped at some point in the vocal cords. That is, you have either it is, if we summarize vowels, that is, we need modification of the mouth and the tongue, and then the air is free. That is total freedom of the air for the production of the vowels. Whereas consonant, sometimes the air is blocked at a certain point of articulation. Sometimes it is delayed. Sometimes it is it goes towards the air. It escapes to the nasal cavity. That's what leads the phonologists to distinguish also between oral sound and nasal sound. What is oral sound and nasal sound? Nasal sound, you have the differentiate, that is this one. It's an argument against Fatima Sadiq and Muhannaji. That is an argument. That is, you have, if you think that is a stop, what about b and the p? How can you differentiate between p and the p and the m? In that case, p and the b are oral sounds, whereas a m is a nasal sound. And here, in some aggressive speech sound, the airflow escapes through both nose and mouth, which means aggressive airstream mechanism sounds. That is, we have two places. Either the air escapes through the mouth or to the nose. If it escapes to the nose, it is nasal cavity. You need the nasal cavity. They are nasal sound. If they escape through the mouth, they are no longer considered as a name. We don't need nasal cavity. They are considered as oral sound. And they have an example of this sound. However, the sound and if we distinguish, if we want to group this sound, that is a p, b, m, form a natural class. They have a certain feature in common, and the natural class we need it in describing the rules. In describing the rules, that is, we need natural class, because our rule must be economical, must be consistent, and because we don't need redundancy in a rule. If I want to have to group these sounds together, the words, and sharing that me, be, pe, me, what kind of common feature that they have in common, they are called consonants, and this one is redundant because the b and the p and the me are consonant, and all consonants, that is a p and the b and the m, are bilabial. We cannot find vowels which are consonants. Vowels which are bilabial. Is that clear? That's why if you say p, b, m are consonant plus consonant, it's redundant. But we say that they are, all of them share one feature, which is bilabiality, because they are produced within the same place of articulation, therefore they are bilabials. And we will see, we'll have example exercises on that. The initial sound are all produced at the level of the lips, where the air is stopped at the point, then released. However, the sound the me differs from p and b in that it uses the nose as well to float outside. It is because of this property that it's referred to as nasal sound, while other are called oral. Nasals are produced by lowering the velum, allowing air to get into the nasal cavity and escape through the nose outside. Is that clear? Now, if we move on to voice and voiceless sound. Voice and voiceless sound are related to the shape of your vocal cords. If the vocal cords are tightened, you produce a voice sound. If they are loosened, you produce voiceless sound. And here, that is vocal cords, they are the two strings that, what I said, are located in the glottis. Here, which is components of the larynx. This is what I told you before. And here, we need binary feature. And the phonologists, they choose the voicing to be the main feature in the rule. If you say that is, and we use binary, which means taken from the dichotomies of the socium. If it is plus voice, which means it has the feature of voicing. For example, p, it is a plus voice, which means, what does it mean? And it is done in terms between, that is in a matrix. In that case, I would say B is a plus voice. It has the feature of voicing, whereas a P is minus voice, not voiceless. I would use plus minus. P is minus voice. It means it lacks the feature of voicing. Similarly, if you have a vowel U and A, it is a minus high, whereas O is a plus high, which means if I say plus, which means it has the feature of this. What do we mean by feature? It has the characteristic of this. And minus high, it lacks the feature of height. Is that clear? Move on. And here, the speech sound which do not make the vocal cords vibrate are termless voiceless, like it sounds. Voicing indicates the state of glottis. That is, if you have, that is, the glottis is open or closed, the gesture at time of sound production, the gesture occurring at or below the glottis, such as voicing, are referred to phonation. That voicing that refers with the glottis is indicates, that is, if the glottis are open, if they are open, they create, that is, voiceless sound, because the vocal cords are not tightened, because they are loosened, and therefore this should not vibrate. And then if they are closed and they create certain vibration, the vocal cords start vibrating, and in terms of voicing, because of this, we call it phonation. Now we move on to plosives. Plosive sound, that is, we are dealing now with consonant, not vowels. Plosives, the following section outline the other phonetic features, properties. What do we mean by feature? Properties, characteristic, elements that have in common, etc. That would help us describe and specify consonant speech sound classes, which means these can be That is the key element towards the rules. That is, if you don't know these things, you can't answer the rules in the coming exercises, even in the coming chapters. You have to know them right now, otherwise you find difficulties in understanding the rules within the generativist approach. These features give information about the articulation of consonants relating to. You have place of articulation, manner of articulation, voicing. Place of articulation, which means the point of articulation where the sound occurs, where it is produced. And manner of articulation is the way. It includes the airstream manipulated in the vocal tract. Therefore, and for aggressive pulmonic airstream mechanism, that is English, Arabic, and French, and other languages, that is all consonants, the most consonants, almost the most consonants are produced on or nearby the alveolar ridge, either nearby the alveolar ridge between the lips, interdental, labiodental, etc., alveolar, or palatal, which means within. They are most of them front. That's why generativists call them anterior and coronal. We will see, plus anterior plus coronal. And each group of speakers has a preferred pronunciation, just as each language has some unique set of inventory sound, because some people prefer to pronounce things words differently from others, because they kind of preference similar to languages, that some languages prefer to have certain inventory set of sound that appear in their language. For example, Arabic does not have a b sound, it has a b, and the French has a p, but our p that we produce in Arabic is not similar to the p that's produced by native speaker of French or English, because our p sounds stronger than their p's because of the interference of Moroccan Arabic when we produce other languages. Where are you from? I'm from Morocco. Ah, I see. You speak Arabic, Moroccan Arabic. In that case, I'm talking about monolingual, not bilingual, those who acquire the two languages at the same time. That is, they are native speakers of both languages. Is that clear? And you have bilingualism or bilinguality. That is bilingualism in society, but we are here, it's not in Moroccan context, we don't have bilingualism. We have bilinguality, either the mother is French or English, etc. Automatically, the child will pick up the two languages because the context is Moroccan, and then the mother language either is French or English. Here, in English, the most widely used consonants are produced on or nearby the alveolar ridge. In French, it's against the teeth, and these sounds are produced. If we compare French and English, that is French, most of the sound are produced against the teeth, whereas the English is near or on or nearby the alveolar ridge. And Indian's language, whereas Indian language has a sound which is it is a retroflex, it's a l. That is l, it is curled. That is the tongue of that is this one like this one. It is rolled, curled in the hard palate, like this one, like the handle of the umbrella. You put your tongue as if your tongue becomes a handle of the umbrella. Like, for example, l, l, r, ro. The Indian. That is the l produced by the Indian. The l for English is alveolar, and then the r is curled backward. Like, for example, L, R, O, L. L is produced with the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge, whereas the R is no longer alveolar, it's alveopalatal because it touches the alveolar, whereas the L, you curl, that is, the tongue is curled. Dorak, curled, and then you put it. That's why you have when you listen to Indians speaking, that is, you feel that they've got accents when they speak speaking using other languages, especially English. You cannot understand them at first because you have that that love for that love. It resembles the given dish the hand reflex. I will it is would warn when pronouncing the sound of language without adopting the relevant native speaker's articulated setting, which means you feel you've got an accent, and we will see accent which is different from this. The symbol used to describe sounds are part of special orthography called International Phonetic Alphabet. Now, IPA, the transcription that I will be using in this class is IPA, not transliteration. Transliteration is used with the special name that cannot use, especially foreigners, Arabic, etc. use transliteration. But IPA, we have to be consistent and using the same language, because if you go and read any book in phonology, you find the same transcription using IPA, which means this is standard by all over the world. That is, in order to understand what's going on in science, for example, in phonology, in the discovery of phonology, etc. This is why the description of any sound you can use IPA, which means International Phonetic Alphabet. And for example, and here the transcription, sometimes the transcription is narrow transcription and sometimes it is broad transcription. Narrow transcription, you have a broad transcription and narrow transcription. Narrow transcription is considered as detailed transcription, which means detailed transcription you give and it is used between label bracketing this way. And broad transcription is used within slanted bars, this one. What is the difference between narrow transcription and broad transcription? Narrow transcription, you add every single detail to the sound. For example, I give, pat, for example, pat. Pat, here, that is, it's a monosyllabic word. And the monosyllabic word, you have one vowel, and the vowel is stressed. Therefore, its stress spreads over the preceding sound. Therefore, the P sound, I will describe the P sound as a P aspirated. It creates certain nuance between the sound. That is, I do not, since we said that speech is continuous, therefore it creates certain nuances between the verb, even the segments. That is, each segment affects, which creates a detailed characteristic of the preceding sound. Like, for example, Pat, Peter. And also, for example, thank you. That is, thank you. This one is a kind of velarization. It's a good example. Velarization, which means here you have n, thank, it is n, but when it is juxtaposed to k, it's no longer considered as thank you. It is considered as Oh, Q. That N, which is alveolar, becomes as a velar. That is the transcription of N. I use the velar rise, which means the velar sound. The velar sound in this one, it is used as broad, that is a narrow transcription, which is a kind of, that is here, it is a kind of description, a detailed description of a particular sound. And this is done through the continuity of speech or connected speech. Is that clear? Let's stop here. See you next week. I am tired because I had 3 sessions in a row. Here you have, whereas broad transcription does not contain any necessary phonetic detail to specify, and it is less subtle than narrow transcription, but it records all the relevant, while a narrow transcription is included between brackets, label brackets. A broad transcription is placed between slanted bars. This is what I said. And next week we will start other things, that is consonant and manner, and you finish your reading, you reread your chapter and do the exercises. And the group 3 and the group 4, group 5, I could not enroll you in Google Classroom. Something is wrong with your institutional email.
So what are we supposed to do, teacher?
Check with the administration, or some of you have a Gmail instead of sending me institutional email. Because if you have one of you sending Gmail instead of institutional email, that is, it's not institutional email, the personal email, that is, they will not be, that is, the Google Classroom won't accept them. Is that clear? Because I need Google Classroom because I want to correct your exercises through Google Classroom. Or I will send to the group 1 and group 2, and you will share with group 1 and group 2. And something is wrong with the your institutional email. That is, for the invitation, I have to copy the link and then send it to you. It's not that I invite you through the institutional email. Something is wrong. Maybe I will check with the administration. Anyway, I'm going tomorrow to, inshallah, to the university because I have exam, and I will check with the administration to settle this, to fix this problem.
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. See you next week. Have a nice week ahead.
You too.